When you're writing to describe something, try and show the reader a clear image of your scene. That's where similes can be really useful. So if you're trying to convey just how loud or fast or large or small something is, try to compare it to something the reader can easily imagine. That way you're giving them a quick demonstration using their imagination rather than being too abstract. For example, perhaps a spider is as wide as a baked bean can, or when the cat was lying down, it was roughly the length of a cricket bat, or the baby she was holding was about the same size and weight of a medium-sized watermelon. These comparisons, they really help the reader see and feel the size and weight of the thing you're trying to describe. And if the object you're describing varies in size a lot, so a spider can be tiny or it can be huge, likewise with most cats and babies, it helps the reader if you compare it to something that doesn't vary in shape and size all that much, so they can have a much more accurate image. A good tip here is to make your similes slightly unusual or incongruous, because your writing is going to be much more fun and interesting if you use some juxtaposition or hyperbole. Don't go over the top, but it can be really effective if you use some contrasts. For example, she placed a battered old briefcase on the desk. Its scuffed brown leather looked like the skin of an old sunbather, and as she proudly sat it on the clear glass, she thought how it looked like an ancient artifact being taken out for inspection. The comparison of the leather to sun-damaged skin helps to really convey the detail of the colour and texture of the leather. Also the contrast between old and new, the glass with the briefcase and the sunbather with the woman with the case, and the comparison between that case and the artefact, it helps the reader create a much more three-dimensional image of the scene. That mention of the sunbather is extra effective because it's somehow out of place. Again, it's incongruous. But it helps to set a tone, usually of intrigue. So when you're revising, try to practice being deliberately incongruous by contrasting things in your description that wouldn't normally go together. For example, a woman in a long white dress ran alone through a muddy forest. That incongruity between her clean white dress against the muddy forest makes the reader intrigued. It makes us ask questions about why is she there, where is she going? And it helps you as the writer get started too. Similarly, oxymorons and paradoxes can work well here. For instance, there was a strange calmness to the chaos, or the silence was deafening. Try to go for something a bit unexpected as well. For instance, her bag dropped to the floor with a thump, as if someone had just been decapitated. Really helpful tip here, avoid cliches at all costs. I have a real aversion to cliches. Most teachers and examiners do as well. Because cliches make someone's writing predictable and boring. It's a bit like copying and pasting stock phrases rather than using your own thoughts and vocabulary. You want to show the examiner you're an independent thinker. You can write with originality. That's what you get high marks for. So avoid using any overused phrases like frightened to death or quiet before the storm, old as the hills, fit as a fiddle, nerves of steel. Just make sure your exam is a cliche-free zone. And remember, when you're describing a scene, you're showing the reader a specific moment in time. Think of it like taking a snapshot and needing to narrate that moment to your reader. It's as if you're in charge of a camera panning around the scene. So if a train is about to crash, for example, you should describe the carnage as it begins to unfold, or what happens in the immediate aftermath, not the events that lead up to it. So just describe the scene as a camera would film it. Here's an example of how you'd do that. As the train hurtled towards the station at full speed, the brakes screeched desperately, the sound of a prima donna about to smash a bulb with her voice. Hot smoke billowed as the friction heated up, releasing the smell of burning rubber. The train alarm sounds, a deafening whistle like 1,000 kettles screaming at once, before carriages knock into themselves so that the train becomes a giant mechanical caterpillar, curling up as it makes its way forward. You'll notice in that example there's also a semantic field of panic and alarm. Now that's deliberate given the context, it's a train crash. So when you generate a semantic field, think about what mood you want to create for your reader. Do you want them to feel happy, melancholic, nostalgic, or somber? Make sure you choose the right connotations from your word classes to create the right mood and atmosphere. A good acronym to remember lots of these techniques is POSH-JAM. Personification, oxymoron or onomatopoeia, simile, hyperbole, juxtaposition, adjectives, and metaphors.